The vast expanses of the oceans have always fascinated mankind. While the shipping routes were mainly used by trading vessels up to the middle of the last century, over the last 70 years people have discovered more and more what a great source of fun and relaxation waterways really are. Thanks to the success of their series of top-quality yachts, since 1978, Baveria yachts from Giebelstadt have played a major role in showing us how much you can enjoy your leisure time on the water. In order to ensure that the construction is carried out most effectively, the finished drawings and designs are optimized in our yard. In our offices high above the production lines, the engineers and production managers at Baveria Yachts discuss how the attractive designs for the new yachts can be realized in the most efficient manner possible during the production process. Because only a well-organized, rational construction, together with the use of high-quality components, can achieve such excellent quality at cost-effective prices. The large CNC machine processes the complete deck by itself, so to speak. By means of a laser and a mechanized scanner, the machine measures the angles of the upper deck, the yard model is automatically identified, and off it goes. In less than an hour, all of the drill holes needed later on are bored, the hatches are milled out, overlaying edges are removed, recesses and borders are sawn. The machine measures the drill holes and cuts to the exact millimeter. This work, which would otherwise require a vast amount of time, has now been reduced to a minimum thanks to our targeted usage of this cutting-edge technology. All of the required parts are already stored along the production line. This saves the fitters from walking around and creates an efficient workplace. During the deck assembly, the upper deck is completed, practically speaking. The winches, stanchions, cleats, lighting and fittings are installed. The order batch card on each deck ensures that it is produced exactly in accordance with the customer's wishes. Here too, the teakwood for the seating and flooring is glued using a vacuum process. At the final stage of the production line, the ship's deck is completely finished before it is then cleaned and polished. The interior of the hulls are painted with top coat. With sailing yachts, the motors are installed during this production stage. The manufacturer supplies them directly to the line just in time. The engines required for 1 week's production are delivered to Giebelstadt and stored right along the production line. This saves the yard storage capacity and shortens the production time. A cost saving that we are happy to pass on to our customers. The engines have already completed their test run at the manufacturers and can be immediately used later on. Here too, the production order on each hull provides information about the configuration of the final yacht. After all, the employees need to know how much horsepower the customer wants during lulls in the wind. In this manner, the yard takes into account the customer's wishes at all times, and that while producing different series of yachts. So as to guarantee the highest possible levels and consistency in terms of quality, the yard produces almost all of its own parts. In order to implement this policy, major attention has been given to the design of the yard's own joinery. Exactly those wood fittings are produced which are required for the yachts currently in production. Once a week, a delivery of mahogany from a managed plantation arrives at the yard. Up to now, the timber has only been pre-cut. All of the solid wood parts will now be produced. The first bandsaw straightens the edges and the rough outlines are cut. Depending on the requirements, over the next days, the widest range of wood strips are milled from the timber. The finished strips of wood are placed automatically on a transporter. Sorted out in accordance with their use, they will now be cut into the correct lengths. The transporter takes the boards with a 2 mm thick solid wood veneer to a processing cycle with several CNC machines and robots. The weekly demand for flaps as well as for press and cabin doors amounts to approximately 3,500 items. This number of items is completed in 1 week by just 4 employees. The first CNC machine processes the edges of the boards and applies the glue all around the wood. The switcher robot takes the boards from a new stack on the transporter, turns them after the first 2 edges have been processed, and places them back on the line. When all of the edges have been processed as required, it stacks the boards back on the transporter, all completely automatically. The next machine attaches the finished strips of wood to the door leaves and grouts both parts. Already now the final doors can be made out. During the next stage, the holes for the door locks and hinges are bored and milled. To test their accuracy, a yard employee fits a lock. It is already now clear which door will be fitted to which yard. At this point in time, the corresponding hull is going through the hull milling process. Of course, with all the other wooden parts, such as the bulkhead, seat covers and small components, the system functions in the exact same way, precisely matching the yards. The items are first sawn from a sheet of marine plywood, and the order in which they are cut out of the sheet is controlled by software to minimize waste. In the same way, like with the hull and deck milling, a multifunctional tool does all the work here, completing all of the required stages for the individual parts in a single run. The parts are sawn, the main grooves milled, the holes are drilled and cut. After 10 minutes, the machine has processed a sheet and the parts are sorted out in accordance with the yard models and stacked up on the transporter. Those parts already glued should not be varnished later on, so that they can be glassed into the hull better. The first 2 coats are varnished onto the parts and then dried briefly in an oven. They are then given 2 more coats of varnish. After this, all 4 coats of varnish are completely dried and hardened using ultraviolet light before a further 2 layers are sprayed on. Then they are dried and hardened once more. In this manner, each wooden part receives 6 coats of varnish on its surface. A switcher robot turns the parts to their other side and they are put through the varnishing line once more. They are now ready and can be stacked back onto the transporter in the correct order for the yards before being transported to the furniture assembly section. While the wooden parts have been processed almost completely by machine so far, the actual assembling of the completed furniture is pure handwork. Only now do we see just how accurate the high-quality CNC machines are when preparing the individual components. All parts belonging to a specific item match perfectly together. In the hull of a sailing boat, the first task is to fit all the bulkheads, partitions and pre-assembled furniture. The parts fit to the exact millimeter, both to each other and into the hull itself. It takes just a short time for the parts to be fitted into the hull completely. As much work as possible is completed while the hull is still open. This gives the employees more space to move around, ensuring the maximum level of precision with their work. Once all of the work has been completed in the yard's interior, the pre-assembled deck is now put in place. Using the crane, it sways out of the deck assembly and over to where it is about to be fitted on. The sealed connection required between the hull and deck is achieved using a permanent elastic, before then being screwed and bolted together, while at the stern it is also laminated. All of those parts required in the final assembly of the yard are already stored along the production line and always close to the exact place where they are needed. Here too our motto is, a short route saves time and money. By now the yard has reached the last stage in the final assembly. Fewer than 8 days have passed since the yard began its life as a mold taken out of the store and about to have its first gel coat. However, the sailing yard is still missing a highly important part, the keel. Depending on the yard model, up to 5 tons of lead are waiting to be connected to the hull. Fitting the keel properly is one of the most demanding tasks when constructing a sailing yard. Using a laser, the keel is vertically positioned. Finally, the rudder still has to be fitted. By now, the final work is being completed on deck. The upholstery, sails and other items are brought on board. Using the production order, which has been attached to the yard during the complete construction phase, the final quality control is carried out. The yard is tested with regard to the quality of its construction, how well it functions, and that it is complete in all respects. As soon as the controllers give their approval, the yard's work is over. The finished yard is transported to the external store, ready to be shipped. Like in the production process, where the just-in-time method has proven its worth, the exact same system is used for shipping. As the yard knows at all times how the work is progressing on all its yards, this permits it to give its dealers the exact delivery dates well in advance. It issues the shipping order to a company specialized in transporting yards, and it collects them from Giebelstadt at the agreed dates. Before a yard is shipped, the corresponding mast is included. However, it is first fitted at the customers.